Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the statistics which we will undoubtedly hear today paint a stark picture of how much more work still needs to be done to keep our women and children safe. Jamaica is therefore pleased to be among the countries of the region that have been included in this global partnership of the Spotlight Initiative.
I'm truly proud and very humbled to be here. The fact that Jamaica is at the heart of this program does not mean that Jamaica is the worst in the region. It does mean that Jamaica has a problem.
Today, we're here to show that with the highest level of political commitment, strong multilateral partnerships, we can directly confront and collectively work to end violence against women and girls. It is possible. It will improve not only women's lives, but that of families and the broader society, and empower women to contribute to their fullest potential to Jamaica's sustainable development.
I keep saying that the violence is not inevitable. It is not a normal part of life. And we can stop the violence, but it requires all of us to stop the violence. It requires women, it requires men, boys and girls. As together, we have to fight this scourge.
And it has an impact on our economy. When an abused woman can't go to work, or when someone dies as the breadwinner, it has an impact. So this is not man and woman business. This is now the business of the people of Jamaica, and thereby the government of Jamaica will intervene.